The awakening of humanity's fury. The galaxy was vast. It stretched beyond the reach of the most ambitious explorers. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of civilizations, each with its own story, its own wars, and its own victories. Among the many species in the universe, none had ever considered humanity to be much of a threat. Earth was a planet that had barely advanced beyond its own conflicts. It was a place of noise, struggle, and what many saw as primitive emotions. Yet, no one understood the depth of what lurked in the hearts of the humans. The rage, the fury that could turn a fragile creature into something terrifying. It began with a signal, a call for help. The Zorathians, a powerful alien race, had been watching Earth from afar. They had seen humans, as a species, struggle with their own inner chaos, wars, famine, and survival. They believed that humanity would never rise above their petty conflicts. The Zorathians saw this as an opportunity to extend their reach. They sent a fleet to make contact, but not with peaceful intentions. They didn't come to offer aid. They came to subdue, to conquer. The humans were unaware of the storm approaching them. The Zorathians came in their largest warships, their colossal armadas filling the skies. They did not come in peace. They came with weapons of unimaginable power. They had believed that humans would cower in fear, just like the other races in the galaxy. But this was a mistake, one that would change everything. As the Zorathian fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, they broadcast their message to the humans. Their words were clear, their tone cold. Surrender now, and your planet will be spared. Resist, and your species will be wiped from existence. For most, the message would have been terrifying. But humanity was different. They didn't see a threat. They saw a challenge. The first few moments of the Zorathian fleet's arrival were filled with fear and confusion. People panicked. Governments scrambled to make sense of the situation. But deep within the hearts of Earth's population, a spark began to grow. It wasn't fear. It was anger. Raw, uncontrollable anger. The humans were not the kind of species that would surrender easily. Over centuries, they had fought among themselves. But in those very wars, they had learned the art of survival. The galaxy had never seen a species so willing to fight for what was theirs. The Zorathians had miscalculated. They thought Earth was weak, but humanity had been battle-tested in ways no alien species could understand. A small group of humans, the military leaders, and those with the knowledge of Earth's weapons, immediately began to work together. They rallied their forces, not to retreat, but to fight. The world united in a way it never had before. For the first time, humans saw their enemy and realized they would not go down without a fight. And then, the first retaliation happened. A missile, launched from one of Earth's defense satellites, shot up into the sky. It was small compared to the vast ships above, but it was enough to send a message. The Zorathians were quick to respond. They fired back, their energy blasts lighting up the sky like a sun erupting. The humans had no chance of matching the firepower of their enemies, but they didn't need to. What they needed was to show that they could fight, that they would not go quietly into the night. In the midst of all this chaos, something unexpected happened, something the Zorathians had not accounted for. The humans adapted. While their weapons were no match for the Zorathian ships, the humans had something far more dangerous: their unpredictability. Humans didn't always follow the rules. They didn't fight with honor or any sense of restraint. In desperation, they pulled together everything they had: improvised weapons, makeshift defenses, and a determination that could not be broken. The Zorathians underestimated this. They were too focused on their superior technology, on their flawless tactics. They didn't understand that humanity, when pushed to the edge, would lash out in ways that defied logic. The war had started, but it was far from over. It was only the beginning of something much larger. The first wave of attacks from the humans wasn't coordinated or perfectly executed, but it was enough to shake the Zorathians. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, They faced a species whose fury couldn't be measured by any known standards. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before. From this moment on, the humans were no longer seen as just another species. They were a threat that would force even the most powerful alien races to think twice. The Zorathians quickly realized that humanity's fury was not something that could be ignored or easily defeated. It was a fire that could burn the entire galaxy if given the right fuel. And as the fires of war ignited, one thing became clear. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. They were the galaxy's worst nightmare. As the first day of battle ended and the smoke from Earth's retaliations began to rise, the galaxy held its breath. What would happen next? Would the humans back down, or would they rise even further? The universe would soon know the answer. The counterattack. The Zorathians watched from their ships as Earth's defenses began to fire back. They had expected the humans to fold, to cower in fear under their immense firepower. But instead, they saw something unexpected. Humans were fighting back. They weren't fighting with precision or grace. They were fighting with desperation, with raw, primal energy. The Zorathians underestimated humanity's greatest strength, its unpredictability. On Earth, chaos had erupted. Governments and military leaders scrambled to form a response to the alien invaders. However, amidst the panic, there was an unspoken unity. Across every nation, citizens who had never worked together began to collaborate. A collective rage was rising, igniting an energy that no one could control. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they would show the galaxy just how dangerous they could be. It started with small victories. A missile launched from a defense satellite hit a Zorathian ship, causing a small explosion. The alien fleet retaliated, but Earth's forces were not yet ready to back down. Humans began to organize, coordinating their efforts to strike at specific points, working together across the planet in ways never before seen. It was clear now. Humanity was not going to lie down and let these invaders walk all over them. The Zorathians couldn't understand it. They sent more ships, deployed their most advanced weapons, and tried to overwhelm Earth's forces. But the humans were relentless. They used every advantage they had, every last ounce of their resourcefulness, to create weapons, traps, and tactics the Zorathians hadn't seen before. The humans had no fear of losing because they didn't know how to give up. In their minds, surrender was not an option. The very thought of it was foreign. In space, the war raged on. The Zorathian fleet was vast, but it wasn't invincible. The humans had a unique advantage. While the Zorathians were highly organized and technologically advanced, they lacked the unpredictable, creative ingenuity that humans brought to the battlefield. As the war continued, it became evident that Earth's forces were learning rapidly, adapting faster than the Zorathians could handle. The humans had the heart to keep fighting. They used the remnants of their fallen cities, their broken military equipment, and even the raw materials available in their environment to craft weapons of destruction. It was in their desperation that the Zorathians would make their greatest mistake, underestimating just how far humans would go to defend what was theirs. Meanwhile, the Zorathians' leaders gathered in their command ship. They watched as their once invincible fleet began to suffer significant losses. Their weapons were powerful, but they weren't enough to stop the relentless tide of humanity. The Zorathian generals knew they had to adapt quickly, but it wasn't easy. They had been trained to deal with races that followed predictable patterns. Humans, it seemed, didn't have any patterns to follow. One Zorathian commander, General Vashar, paced in his command room, his mind racing. He knew that the humans had no choice but to fight, yet he couldn't understand why they were doing so with such fury. What made them different from the countless other species they had conquered? What was it that had pushed them to this point? Vashar had faced countless civilizations before, but none of them had fought like this. None of them had fought like humans. He watched as a new report came in. A human strike team had destroyed a crucial Zorathian supply depot, crippling their operations. It was a blow, but not a fatal one. The humans were still no match for the might of the Zorathian Empire. They couldn't be. Could they? Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans had only begun to fight back in earnest. Every loss they faced only fueled their anger more. The death of a single soldier, the fall of a city, it didn't make them retreat. It pushed them forward. As the alien invaders continued to push into human territories, the people of Earth were becoming something else, something far more dangerous. In underground bunkers and hidden military installations, human engineers, scientists, and military strategists worked day and night. They weren't just building weapons, they were building a resistance. They weren't just trying to win this war, they were trying to make sure the Zorathians never returned. Ever. In space, humanity had started to employ guerrilla tactics. Small, agile ships darted between the massive Zorathian warships, launching surprise attacks on weak points. Each ship destroyed was a small victory, but with every one of these victories, humanity's confidence grew. They had felt powerless before, but now, they could taste victory. They were no longer the underdogs. The Zorathian fleet had miscalculated. They had assumed that humanity's primitive nature would be its downfall. They had assumed the human will to survive was fragile, something that could be broken with just a few blows. But what the Zorathians failed to see was that humanity's fury, its refusal to be broken, was its greatest weapon. The first wave of retaliation by the humans wasn't pretty, but it was effective. It wasn't about strategy or advanced tactics. It was about willpower, raw energy, and the overwhelming desire to protect their home. The Zorathians had underestimated the human spirit, and now they were paying the price. And as the battle continued, it became clear to everyone that the war was far from over. The Zorathians might have had the upper hand in technology and firepower, but they had no idea what they were up against. Humanity was just getting started. The human surge. As the days stretched into weeks, the Zorathians found themselves increasingly baffled by humanity's unpredictable tactics. They had been taught to expect a certain level of organization, a certain rhythm to the way civilizations fought. But humans, it seemed, had no rhythm. They were chaotic, unrestrained, and utterly relentless in their drive to survive. On Earth, the resistance was swelling. People from all walks of life, scientists, farmers, mechanics, soldiers, and civilians, were all coming together to fight back. No longer were they just waiting for the inevitable destruction. They were actively hunting down Zorathian forces, sabotaging their supply lines, and conducting guerrilla strikes deep into enemy territory. The war was being fought on every front, and Earth was showing no sign of slowing down. The Zorathians watched with growing unease as their tactics failed time and time again. Their massive warships were being picked apart by small, nimble human vessels. The human military had begun to adapt, turning their technological disadvantages into strengths. They had learned to use the environment to their advantage, hiding in asteroid fields, launching ambushes, and setting traps that the Zorathians could not have anticipated. But what terrified the Zorathians most was the human spirit, the sheer determination that seemed to surge through every Earthling, no matter their background. It was as if they had a collective fury that no one had anticipated. They didn't just want to survive. They wanted to destroy the invaders that dared to challenge them. Every victory fueled their rage, and every loss made them fight harder. Among the humans, there was a growing sense of unity. The war wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It had become something personal. Every soldier who fell was not just a soldier. They were a son, a daughter, a friend, a father. Every city that burned wasn't just a place. It was a home, a community, a family. Humanity had something the Zorathians would never understand. A deep, unshakable bond with their world and their people. Back in the Zorathian command ship, General Vashar paced nervously as he received reports of human victories. It was becoming clear that they could not simply crush humanity with brute force. The humans had something that couldn't be defeated by firepower alone. A deep-seated rage that burned hotter than any weapon in the galaxy. Vashar couldn't understand it. How could these primitive creatures, who had just a fraction of the Zorathians' technological power, be defeating his warriors? His ships were being torn apart, their advanced weapons proving ineffective against the unexpected tactics of the humans. Each battle seemed to get worse, and the fear that had started as a whisper was now growing into a roar. Humanity was fighting not just for survival, but for vengeance. One particularly brutal attack saw a small group of human pilots infiltrating the Zorathian cruiser. They didn't have the firepower to destroy it, but they had something better: a relentless drive to get to the heart of the enemy and rip it apart. The humans boarded the cruiser, overwhelmed its crew, and sabotaged its core systems, sending the ship careening into an asteroid field. It was a complete disaster for the Zorathians, a minor skirmish that escalated into a complete defeat. Back on Earth, the news of each small victory spread like wildfire. Humanity, once on the verge of extinction, was beginning to show the galaxy that it was capable of more than mere survival. It could fight back. It could win. The Zorathians were forced to adjust. They began to rethink their strategies, trying to anticipate the humans' next moves. But every time they thought they had the upper hand, humanity would show them just how far they were willing to go to protect their home. And yet, the Zorathians still couldn't understand. What was it that made humans so dangerous? What was it that allowed them to take on an entire galactic empire and fight back against forces far beyond their means? The answer, they would soon learn, was simple: humanity's fury. It was a force unlike anything the universe had ever known. The more the Zorathians tried to suppress it, the stronger it grew. Each attempt to crush humanity only fueled the fire. And the Zorathians had made a grave mistake in thinking they could defeat a species so driven by the need to survive. Humanity's surge wasn't just a response to the Zorathians' attacks. It was a statement that they would never give up, a statement that they would fight to the last breath if necessary, a statement that even the greatest empire in the galaxy would have to reckon with the fury of a single human. As the battles continued and the Zorathians began to falter, it became clear: the galaxy had underestimated humanity. The greatest war ever fought was just beginning, and it would be a war where humanity would not be the victims. They would be the victors. The turning tide. The Zorathian Empire, once confident in their dominance over the galaxy, now found themselves caught in a storm they couldn't control. The humans, whom they had underestimated, were fighting back with a ferocity that no one had ever seen before. It wasn't just their military tactics that had shifted the tide. It was something deeper, something that could not be measured by firepower or strategy alone. The Zorathian generals convened in a darkened war room, their faces grim with the realization that their might was not enough. Reports poured in from all corners of the galaxy, each one confirming the same disturbing trend: humanity was winning. Not in the traditional sense, but in a way that defied logic. A group of human engineers had sabotaged an entire Zorathian fleet with nothing more than their resourcefulness and determination. A squadron of human pilots had disabled an advanced warship using simple but devastating guerrilla tactics. No one could figure out how these primitive creatures had turned the tables on them. General Vashar, the once confident commander of the Zorathian invasion, was no longer the leader he had been. His once unshakable confidence had been replaced by doubt and fear. The humans were unpredictable. Their strategy was unorthodox. Their weapons, while not as advanced as Zorathian tech, were deadly in ways the Empire had never anticipated. It was during one particularly daring raid by the humans that the full scope of their terrifying nature became clear. A Zorathian warship had been ambushed by a small, seemingly insignificant group of human soldiers who had no right to be as successful as they were. The soldiers didn't have the advanced technology to match the Zorathian fleet, but they had something far more dangerous: a burning desire to win. The Zorathians had no concept of what drove these humans. For them, wars were fought with honor, with calculated movements and sophisticated weaponry. But the humans didn't fight for honor. They fought for survival, and they fought with an anger that could not be quenched. Vashar's mind raced as he looked at the latest intelligence reports. Humanity was no longer just fighting for their planet. They were fighting for the very future of their species. And in that fight, they had something the Zorathians couldn't take away: a deep-rooted hatred for those who sought to destroy them. It was a rage that fueled every strike, every counterattack, every desperate move. What made the humans so terrifying was not just their will to survive, but their willingness to sacrifice everything for their cause. They had no choice but to fight. They had no choice but to win. And the Zorathians were about to learn that underestimating humanity would be their greatest mistake. The turning point came when a small group of human fighters captured the Zorathian high-ranking officer during a raid on a military outpost. This officer held critical intelligence that could have turned the tide in favor of the Zorathians, but the humans had different plans. They didn't torture or interrogate him. They simply let him speak, made him understand the cost of their fight. The officer's final words were chilling. "You think you can win, but we are everywhere. You cannot defeat what is already decided to fight for its existence." It was a sobering realization for the Zorathians. The humans were not just fighting to protect their homes. They were fighting because they had nothing left to lose. And in that kind of war, there was no stopping them. The tide had turned. The once unstoppable force that was the Zorathian Empire now found itself on the defensive. Every victory the humans claimed seemed to embolden them, and each loss for the Zorathians seemed to crush their morale a little bit more. The war was no longer a matter of conquering a weak species. It had become a matter of survival for the invaders. On Earth, the news of every victory sent ripples of hope across the planet. What had once seemed like an impossible fight was now becoming a reality. Humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving. They were striking back at their oppressors, and each strike was sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And in the heart of the Zorathian fleet, as Vashar watched the latest reports come in, he realized something that filled him with dread. The humans were not afraid of dying. They didn't fear death the way the Zorathians did. They feared losing everything: their families, their homes, their future, and they would fight until the last breath to keep what was theirs. The war was no longer about territory. It was about survival, and humanity had something the Zorathians couldn't fight: a relentless, all-consuming drive to protect their world. As the Zorathians prepared for their next strike, they had one thought in their minds. They had awakened the rage of a species that could never be tamed. And now, they would have to face the consequences: the human counterattack. The Zorathian Empire, reeling from the unexpected ferocity of humanity's resistance, was beginning to fracture. The realization that they had awoken a sleeping giant, one driven by survival, sent shockwaves through their command structure. There was no strategy or weapon in their arsenal that could anticipate the brutal efficiency with which the humans fought. While the Zorathians prepared for what they believed would be a decisive blow, humanity's counterattack was already in motion. The human forces had taken full advantage of their resourcefulness, combining their raw creativity with their advanced technology. What had once seemed like simple, makeshift solutions were now evolving into highly sophisticated weaponry. The Earth's brightest minds, once hidden in the shadows, had emerged as a united front. General Vashar, having underestimated humanity's ingenuity, was forced to watch as reports flooded in. The humans had created new weapons out of salvaged Zorathian tech, a weapon they called the Ember, capable of disabling the Zorathian energy shields that had once been impervious to all other forms of attack. The Ember wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. One of the first successful tests of the Ember had come during an assault on a Zorathian military base. Human soldiers, equipped with the new technology, stormed the base with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The Zorathians had expected to see their enemies falter, but instead they were met with an overwhelming force that cut through their defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Ember rendered their once impenetrable shields useless, allowing human soldiers to tear through their ranks with ease. In the days that followed, A series of victories across the galaxy followed suit. Zorathian strongholds fell one after the other, each defeat shaking the very foundation of their empire. The human resistance wasn't just holding their ground. They were reclaiming what they had lost and more. It was as though every defeat the Zorathians suffered only fueled the humans' resolve to push further. Back on Earth, the news of each victory spread like wildfire. Humanity, once thought to be weak and primitive, was now the galaxy's most feared adversary. The media, once focused on trivial distractions, had become a source of inspiration, rallying millions to the cause. Families, communities, and nations united as one, supporting the troops and pledging their allegiance to the fight. Humanity had embraced the war, and in doing so, they had tapped into a power that no one, least of all the Zorathians, could have foreseen. General Vashar, meanwhile, had begun to question everything he had ever known. His entire life had been spent in service to the Zorathian Empire, and now it seemed like everything was falling apart. The human warriors were not simply defending their planet. They were making a statement. They were showing the galaxy that they would never again be subjugated, that their will to fight would never be broken. As humanity's forces spread across the galaxy, wiping out entire Zorathian fleets and retaking captured worlds, a new kind of terror began to settle in among the invaders. The fear was no longer just about losing battles. It was about the sheer unpredictability of humanity's next move. No one could predict what the humans would do next. Their tenacity and imagination made them more dangerous than any weapon in the Zorathian arsenal. But the true turning point came when the humans infiltrated a Zorathian flagship and captured one of their high-ranking commanders. They didn't execute him. They did something far worse. The human resistance leader, who oversaw the capture, a brilliant tactician named Commander Harper, gave the Zorathian officer a simple choice: surrender or face the consequences of the galaxy's most powerful force, a human force. The officer, once a symbol of Zorathian might, broke down in front of the cameras that recorded his every word. His voice trembled as he confessed to the galaxy that the human strength wasn't just in their weapons. It was in their unity, their resolve, and their refusal to yield. "We thought you were weak," the officer said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we were wrong. The humans are more terrifying than anything we could have imagined. They fight not for glory, not for power, but for the survival of their kind. That makes them unstoppable." The broadcast was watched by billions across the galaxy, and it sent a chilling message to every empire and species that had once considered humanity an easy target. The Zorathians were not the only ones who feared the human warrior spirit. The entire galaxy was beginning to take notice. There was no place left to hide from the fury of the species that had been pushed to the edge. As humanity's victories continued to pile up, General Vashar's thoughts grew darker. The realization had set in. They were not facing an enemy they could crush with sheer might. They were facing an enemy that could not be reasoned with, an enemy that could not be outsmarted, because they were fighting for something far more powerful than victory itself. Humanity was fighting for survival. And when a species fights for its very existence, there is no force in the universe strong enough to stand in its way. The balance of power had shifted, and it seemed that the galaxy's worst nightmare had only just begun. Now the only question was, could the Zorathians stop the unstoppable human war machine, or would humanity's fury reshape the galaxy forever? The reckoning. As humanity's fury spread like wildfire across the galaxy, General Vashar and his commanders found themselves scrambling for solutions. No matter how many Zorathian forces they sent to crush the humans, they could not keep up with the speed and unpredictability of their attacks. The human resistance, united under a common cause, became a force that moved with surgical precision, dismantling their empire piece by piece. The Zorathians, once a mighty and feared race, now stood at the edge of annihilation. Their invincible fleets were no match for the human ingenuity that had overturned the tide of war. Their once feared battle strategies had become obsolete. The humans were relentless, adapting quickly to every new tactic the Zorathians devised. And with each defeat, humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most terrifying species grew stronger. On Earth, the human military forces were no longer operating in isolation. They had allied with other species, beings who had once been too afraid to stand against the might of the Zorathians. Now they rallied behind humanity, forming an unprecedented coalition that the Zorathians could not hope to match. The resistance had become more than just a rebellion. It had become a full-scale revolution, and every victory only fueled the fire within humanity's heart. The turning point came when the human fleet, led by Commander Harper, launched a massive offensive against Zorathian-controlled space. The battle was fierce, with Zorathian ships outnumbering the humans nearly 10-1. Yet the humans fought with unmatched skill, knowing that their survival depended on victory. They had no choice but to win. The battle raged for days, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Zorathian forces, overconfident in their superior numbers, were caught off guard by the humans' new weaponry. The Ember, a weapon developed to disable the Zorathians' energy shields, was used with devastating effect, leaving Zorathian ships vulnerable to attack. The tides of war were shifting, and with every strike, the Zorathians knew that their empire was crumbling. But it was the moment when humanity unleashed their most daring move that truly shook the Zorathians to their core. Using a fleet of smaller, faster ships, the humans infiltrated the heart of the Zorathians' capital, the crown jewel of their empire. The Zorathians had thought they were safe behind their defensive walls, but the humans had no intention of merely fighting on the battlefield. They had a message to send, and they were going to send it loud and clear. As the human fleet descended upon the Zorathian capital, the universe watched in stunned silence. The humans were not content with simply defeating their enemy. They were here to show the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. They had already taken back their home, and now they were coming for the heart of the empire that had dared to challenge them. When the humans reached the capital, they didn't just invade. They broadcasted their victory to the entire galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity had risen from the ashes, and they would not rest until the Zorathians were no more. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a declaration of humanity's place in the universe. General Vashar, having seen his empire fall before his eyes, finally understood the true nature of the human warrior spirit. He had thought that they could be crushed, that their resistance was merely a fleeting spark. But now, standing at the precipice of the Zorathian Empire's demise, he knew the truth. Humanity was the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Zorathians had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated their enemy. They had thought they could conquer the humans as easily as they had conquered countless other worlds. But the Zorathians had not known the depth of humanity's strength, nor the unbreakable resolve that drove them to fight. They had ignited a fury that could not be extinguished. And now, the galaxy was about to feel the full force of that fury. As the final Zorathian fleets were shattered and their leaders were captured, the galaxy was left in stunned silence. Humanity had won. The humans had not only survived, they had triumphed, and they had sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Never again would they be seen as weak. The reckoning had come, and it was clear. The galaxy would never forget the day that humanity's fury reshaped the universe. The Zorathians were no more, and the galaxy was left to wonder what the future held now that humanity had proven they were a force to be reckoned with. With the fall of the Zorathian Empire, the galaxy was forever changed, and humanity stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges the universe would throw their way next. The most terrifying warrior species in the galaxy had spoken, and the entire universe had heard their roar. The legacy of humanity's fury. The universe was forever altered in the wake of humanity's triumph. The Zorathian Empire, once thought indomitable, was now a shadow of its former self. What had been an oppressive force was now nothing more than a history lesson for the galaxy. And humanity, the species that had been written off as weak and insignificant, was now the most powerful force in the known universe. As the dust settled and peace began to take root across the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted. No longer were humans seen as mere pawns in the cosmic chess game, easily disposable and powerless in the face of alien threats. The message was clear. Humanity had not only fought back, but had reshaped the very nature of galactic power. They had become the new standard, the new benchmark by which all other species would be measured. In the aftermath of their victory, humanity's leaders began to forge new alliances and strengthen their influence across the galaxy. No longer were they isolated on their homeworld, vulnerable to the whims of alien forces. They were now at the center of a sprawling coalition, one that stretched across the stars. Allies from once subjugated species flocked to humanity's side, eager to learn from their strength, and most importantly, to ensure that the power they had wielded in battle would never again be used against them. The Zorathian collapse left a void in the galaxy, a void that was quickly filled by humanity's newly formed coalition. But the galaxy was not without its new challenges. Other species, seeing the rise of humanity's power, began to grow wary. The balance of the galaxy had shifted, and some feared that humanity might become the next empire to dominate, much as the Zorathians had once done. But humanity, with its newfound wisdom and humility, was not interested in domination. They had fought for survival, and now they fought to build a future where peace and cooperation could thrive. Though they could never forget the horrors they had endured at the hands of the Zorathians, they were determined to lead the galaxy by example, not through fear, but through strength, unity, and honor. The human warriors who had fought so fiercely in the war, the men and women who had sacrificed everything, were now hailed as heroes. Their names were etched into the annals of history, and their actions were passed down through generations. But they were not the only ones who had played a part in the galaxy's rebirth. The civilians, the families, the scientists, the engineers, everyone had contributed to humanity's survival. Together, they had overcome insurmountable odds, and together, they would build a new era. As the galaxy moved forward, one thing remained clear: humanity's fury had not been a temporary flame. It was a lasting force, a power that would be wielded with purpose and precision. No longer were they the underdogs. They had proven themselves, and the galaxy knew that the next time humanity faced a threat, the entire universe would tremble. But amidst the celebrations and triumphs, humanity had learned an important lesson. They knew that power, while necessary to protect themselves and their allies, must never be misused. They had seen firsthand the horrors that unchecked power could bring. They had witnessed the destruction that came when one species sought to dominate others. Now they had the opportunity to lead the galaxy toward a future that would avoid the same mistakes made by those before them. The war had ended, but the true battle had just begun. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders, dangers, and mysteries yet to be uncovered. There would be new challenges, new enemies to face, and new alliances to form. And humanity, with its unshakable will and boundless resolve, was ready to face them all. The story of humanity's fury would be told for generations to come. A story of strength, resilience, and the unwavering determination of a species that refused to be conquered. It was a story that would inspire all who heard it, and one that would remind the galaxy, for all time, of the true power of humanity. And so, the legacy of humanity's fury continued, echoing across the stars, a reminder to all that when humanity is pushed to the edge, it will rise, unyielding and unstoppable, to rewrite the fate of the universe itself.